Let me pray first, yeah? God, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of all of our hearts be pleasing in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. All right. So what is the energy level in the room here? Okay. There's some here. Well, because Mary's not here, I have a little bit more free reign to do a few things. Because we're going to contextualize our time together on humaning. Right? We're going to take the word human and make it a verb. Right? So how to human. So we're going to reflect on being created as humans, coming from the word like humus, right? The earth or earthlings, as well as engaging and actively participating as humans in God's design. So we're going to take a couple minutes, and if you're able and willing, we're going to try to take a small example and practice this. I'm still trying to decide what the energy level is in this room. All right, we're going to build some energy here. All right, if you guys in body or in spirit can get up. For those of you who cannot embody, that's okay. How are you guys with physical touch? No physical. Okay, I've been told this before. Okay, let's just start with some movement, okay? This is something that we want to kind of relearn, re-engage what it feels like for our bodies to be at work and moving, right? Can you guys squats? Can we do some squats? All right. Hands out in front of you. Your feet spread out a little bit. I know they don't give you very much space here, right? All right. We're going to count. Ready? 1. As low as you want. 2. 3. If it's too easy for some of you guys, put your hands up higher. Your heart will pump harder. And for those of you who are just standing with me, thank you. What's the count? I lost it. Oh, we got to 11 already? 9. Wait, what? 8. Okay, I think 9. 10. 11. 12. Okay, I see some smiles here. All right, we're waking up. See, the other thing we try to point out sometimes is that physical activity not only helps your body keep in shape and moving, but it improves mood, right? Some of you. All right, you guys can give up whenever you want. All right, I see you quitters. All right. And so if you also notice, just take a moment and sense through your body. Right? Anybody feel some tingling in different places? Nobody. Okay, fine. You guys nodded a little bit. Right? That's energy moving throughout your body. And that's something that we don't always get a chance to notice. Right? Maybe also take a moment, feel your breathing. I don't know if this was a good idea or a bad idea for me to kind of hype myself before talking to you all. All right. So now that we've kind of set a little bit of stage, loosened you guys up a little bit, what are some adjectives you guys can throw out for machines? Can I hear anything from you all? Soulless. Okay. Unstoppable. Okay. Consistent. Unemotional. Well-oiled. I heard something over here. Automated. Productive. Predictive. Enduring. Yeah, except the laptop that needs to be replaced all the time, right? So we asked some of our friends at work what they thought, and see, some of these are up here right now, right? Some people thought machines are imperfect, which is not a bad descriptor there. Inflexible, we have that consistency. Productive, someone said, right? Sturdy, rigid, artificial, unfeeling, repetitive, tireless. Let's try some words for humans. Complex. Imperfect. Emotional. Alive. Polished? Sorry. Poet. Am I? Power. Thank you for your patience. Spiritual. tired. That's real, right? So we have some of those as well, right? Imperfects on there. Emotional, beautiful, energetic, caring, image bearers. You said tired, prone to fatigue, limited. Some of these are characteristics of being finite and mortal. Some of them are actually potentially powerful, beautiful gifts, right? And so I'm assuming we're all human here, AI people in the room. And we've come up with some descriptors and adjectives for machines and some for humans, right? And what I'd like to say is that disease, as we experience it in its severity, in its frequency, in its excess, comes from dehumanization, right? When we're not fueling ourselves as we were designed to be, when we're not using our bodies the way we were designed to be, when we're not connecting with others, with ourselves, with God, in the way we were designed to be, right? It's this disregard for the need for rest sometimes, right? That productivity that we're trying to be machines rather than humans. Right. So 6 out of every 10 US adults has one chronic medical problem. Right? We're talking about heart disease, cancer, Alzheimer's, diabetes, stroke, chronic kidney disease. 4 out of every 10 adults has 2 or more, right? And they stem from the same risk factors in lifestyle, right? Poor nutrition, lack of physical activity, tobacco, alcohol. So some of you might be familiar with lifestyle medicine. It's a subspecialty in evidence-based pillars that work as a framework to prevent, treat, and in sufficient doses reverse this excess chronic medical disease. In particular, excess chronic non-communicable disease, right? And those pillars are predominantly more fruits and vegetables, plants, right? Fiber-rich foods, regular physical activity, restorative sleep. I often like to say, we as human beings have come up with lots of ways to sedate ourselves. But sleep is meant to be restorative. Stress management, avoidance of risky substances, and healthy relationships. We have evidence for the benefits of a healthy relationship with ourselves, with God, with others, and with creation. So these pillars, if you notice the way they're kind of depicted here, they're interrelated. They all affect one another. So humans are interconnected and all affect each other as well, right? So it helps us recognize that all of us matter and all of these things matter together, right? We are well when our neighbor is well as well. And so what I'm saying is, I'm saying disease occurs when we're not being whole human beings. So we can see what it means to be human from the creation narrative of God's design, right? The need for rest is a gift, right? And it's for everyone. It's baked in, right? Should be your son, your daughter, your male or female servant, your animals, any foreigners. It's for everybody. So it's an equity thing. It's a collective rest that we're called to in our design. So everyone gets to rest, whether that's the clinician trying to meet productivity goals, whether that's the patient with multiple jobs and handling a large household, right? We are meant to be provided for and equipped for that work, right? So the day cycle is there was evening and there was morning, right? It's rest for the work ahead. The world doesn't stop. You still eat and you need to eat. It's rest before work, to be filled before you're being asked to produce. And again, it's a gift and a care from God to rest, right? It's useless to be trying to burn the candle at both ends, right? That's not what we are being called to. And while we are sleeping, God provides, right? So let us rest. Because doing more misses the point. The perception that to do more is to be more is perpetuating dehumanization, right? And it furthers unsustainable imbalance. Now, this excerpt from the Sermon on the Mount is a stone of remembrance for me. It's a pivotal kind of passage that helped challenge the way I think. Because as many of you can read and know, this passage says, God knows what you need. You don't need to be anxious about that, right? He'll provide. The problem with that is I have patients, and many of you probably do as well, day in and day out in front of me who do not have, right? I have to be able to figure out how does that work with this passage, right? If they stop to rest, they might not eat. They might not have a place to stay, right? And even if they didn't stop to rest, they still might not have what they need to eat or a place to stay. So what gives, right? So we look at verse 33, which is not numbered on here, but it's here, right? What does it mean to seek first the kingdom of God and his righteousness? What is Jesus inviting us to participate in, right? Because what this is not saying is, if you don't have, you're just not working hard enough. I see some nodding. I hope we're all following along with this. So I guess what I would suggest is we're looking for restorative justice, right? We're being part of this restoration. The kingdom of God is restorative, right? We're looking to make sure that resources are accessible, right? God desires for everyone to be able to participate and contribute, and also to be cared for adequately for this collective good. And so, and even in this Ephesians passage, right? It's not about just not stealing. It's about having something to offer someone else, right? And in the end, it's like, is this the one about no generational? Yes, the Jubilee, right? There should be no generational poverty. So God desires for all of his gifts and blessings to be accessible to everyone, right? God desires for everyone to take part in his provision and blessing. So in this Isaiah passage, every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low, right? So valleys up, mountains and hills down. The rough ground shall be made level, the rugged places a plain. So, right? Removing those obstacles of access on the way. This passage from Leviticus, if she cannot afford a lamb, she is to bring 2 doves or 2 young pigeons. This is about making it accessible, right? The lamb costs too much. There's still a way for you to participate in meeting with God, right? And in the Matthew and Mark accounts of Jesus clearing the temple, right? The authors particularly note money changers, right? And those selling doves and pigeons. The other accounts talk about more, but I think Matthew and Mark are making the particular statement that God is about equity, right? Because who needs the money change? It's foreigners, right? People traveling. And who needs the doves and the pigeons? People who can't afford more. So what does this look like at Esperanza? Right now, we are offering 4 different shared medical appointments, lifestyle medicine, shared medical appointment groups. We have one called Full Plate Living, which is based on a curriculum that I'll give you a website at the end to look up. It's a free curriculum based on fiber-rich nutrition and physical activity. And we run that as a weekly shared medical appointment for 10 weeks. LEADER stands for Lifestyle Empowered Approach to Diabetes Remission. So this is a American College of Lifestyle Medicine curriculum that it has come out that we offer. The reason it says HP and KA are 2 different sites that we offer them. And this, again, is nutrition and physical activity based, but focused on people who have diabetes or prediabetes and theming it around that. And then we have a group called Sleep, Stress, and Spirituality, which we did not have last year when I was presenting about lifestyle medicine at Esperanza. This group came out of a request from our patients. So doing these groups here, the full plate living group, we often talk about the 6 pillars, right, that help us frame how to approach whole person care. And we ask each group, where would you like to focus a little bit more? And they asked for sleep and stress. So we formed this group. And the sleep and the stress part here is based on a CBI curriculum, and it's an awesome curriculum that our behavioral health person, Mary, leads. But the spirituality part comes from our patients, right? When we ground into what their real life experiences are. How do they cope and manage? What do they find strength and refuge in? That's where the spirituality comes in, right? It's contextual. And you can see a little bit about what we get to enjoy, right? We get to slow down, stop, and spend time together in things that otherwise, we would say, oh, we don't have time for that, right? So whether that's collage, art, and also discussion, like sharing in each other's lives. So while we have those 4 different groups, every one of those sessions covers 4 domains. So there's a didactic portion, which is kind of your traditional lecture style, education, passing, knowledge giving part. And that is usually around nutrition, but again, it can be about sleep or stress management. We also do experiential learning. How do we engage all of our senses? When it comes to food, we try to point out how we pay attention with all of our senses, right? The classic example I like to use in our groups is cooking onions, right? We start off with this acidic, pungent, eye-watering raw onion in the room. And as it cooks, bless you, the smell changes. You see the color change. You hear the things happening. You smell. And we talk about how you have to pay attention to those things because brown is helpful. Black, you don't want your onions to turn black, okay? And people get to participate in building and creating and cooking and suggesting the foods that we make. Behavioral health. So we have time that's specifically facilitated time for synergistic learning towards behavioral change. Because we can't just go and do this, right? There's a lot that goes into that that we have to be able to work through. And then I struggle a little bit with what to call this last part. I usually call it like muscle movement or something like that, but we call it now somatic experience because it's not always squats. Sometimes it's deep breathing. Sometimes it's progressive muscle relaxation. Sometimes it's this thing we call freezing and melting, right? How do we engage our bodies? And giving people a chance, again, to review what it feels like to use parts of their bodies that they might not normally be doing. We always make sure no one's getting angina or passing out or anything like that. And we adapt, based on what people feel able and are willing to do. So the idea behind this is let's make things visible, let's make things familiar, let's normalize these foods, this goal setting, how to make these decisions, normalize the difficulty in behavioral change, normalize what it looks like to move your body on a regular basis, right? We want to help people associate things, right? Whether it's paying attention to when your body is feeling a little bit more anxious, when you're moving outside this window of capacity, right, towards hyperarousal or hypoarousal, that you'll be able to know that is happening in your body. To be able to practice your sensory engagement and to create habits out of repetition and then creating these neural linkages. We have these kids that also come and do their exercise time in our gym at our health center. And what we've done is week in, week out, starting from a time where a kid popped into the kitchen and said, hey, you got anything to eat? We now every week provide apple slices and a dip, usually made out of dates or cashews or something like that. No one has an allergy. And they now associate that. Every Thursday, they're like, I'm gonna move my body. I'm gonna fuel it with apples and fruit, right? Yeah, and the goal is to help people move further and further towards the healthier choice being the easier default choice. So the posture of how these groups are formed and then delivered is fundamental to how we nurture and align the mission of our healing, right? Also, all of this that we do is centered around community, which is one of these pillars, right? The social connectedness, healthy relationships. So a couple years ago, I was introduced to this concept, anava, and I actually got so excited I shared it in one of these workshops. So if you've heard it before, I'm glad to tell you again. So anava is this idea that's translated often in the Bible as meekness or humility. And not every word of humility in the Bible is from anava, but anava is translated as that. But it's a deeper concept that every person has a God-ordained purpose and place to fill, right? And we should be filling it, not underfilling and not overfilling, right? Because if we don't fill that space, we are shortchanging what God has to offer through us. If we overfill, we are overstepping and not allowing someone else to fill their space, right? And so there's this idea that you have a place, you have a place, you have a place, and we fill this together, right? And that we are designed to do it that way. There's this study, it's not a new study, it's probably like over a decade old, looking at these positive emotions. And there's one positive emotion that overwhelmingly is associated with decreased interleukin-6 levels and inflammation and improved immune function. Do you guys know what that is? Wait, I heard yes. Was it? Thankfulness. Thankfulness. Any other guesses? I feel like you want to say something. Hopeful. Hope. Uh-huh. It's awe. A-W-E. I wouldn't have guessed that. But it's interesting when they describe why, right? They say it's because you don't have to diminish yourself to be in awe, but yet you see yourself in something amazingly bigger than you. That's kind of like the Christian experience, right? And it's also anava, right? And I think that's so cool. Okay, maybe you guys are not experiencing as much awe as I am in this concept, but I think that's amazing. So anyway, I guess my point here is that just together, we as humankind reflect the image of God together. And we should encourage that in every way and recognize that as much as we can. And how that actually looks is then our learning becomes multi-directional, right? Everybody has something to offer, right? Our patients have something valuable to give to us as facilitators and clinicians. They have something valuable to share with each other. And that's the beauty of the way we do these groups, right? We have the opportunity to do that. Everyone is invited. So that shows up in a few different ways. So I'm an internal medicine trained doc, so I bill for adults in my class, in my groups. But I welcome support people, who are not patients. I welcome their kids if that's the way they get in and that's part of the way their household works. So we're talking about adult kids and little kids. Can't bill for them. But they're welcome in. Why? Because these are the relationships that affect their health, right, and well-being. But it also includes recognizing that our patients invite other patients to come to these groups, right? We recognize that we pull in people who are just passing by in the hallway, say, hey, you're interested? Come on in, right? These groups are diagnostically agnostic, meaning you don't have to have a particular diagnosis to come. I know I mentioned the diabetes remission group, but there also are people in that group who don't have diabetes or prediabetes. And the cool thing is lifestyle medicine is applicable to all human beings. You don't have to have a diagnosis. And guess what? It also applies to basically every diagnosis as well. And then cultural relevance. This is particularly important for no reason at all, other than that it's important. what I want to comment on is what I've come to understand as what it means to be culturally relevant. When it comes to food, it's easy to stereotype. You're a certain culture, you eat this food. With our particular population that's predominantly Spanish speaking, it does not mean we just make tacos and burritos in different forms and versions. We do make tacos and burritos, but we make what people ask for, right? We make what people are interested in eating. We also have to be aware of what we have access to, right? And we make food out of that. And so people get really excited. They are offering their suggestions every week for the next week's menu, but they also get excited to be pleasantly surprised about what we can come up with. So this is just a visual for you to kind of appreciate what our groups get to experience. So it's food inspired by patient requests, staff requests, driven by what people want to eat and what we have available. And it's also very intentional how we present it. So as we cook on site, these scents are wafting through the ventilation system, right? So people upstairs can smell it, people in the admin office can smell it, people having their meetings can smell it, and then people in the group can smell it. And we try to make things look good, right? It doesn't take studies, but there are studies that say that beautifully plated food is perceived as healthier, which in this case it is, and beautifully plated food is perceived as tastier, which I like to think also is the case here. Also the colors, the symmetry, all of that affect how people receive it, right? If we're able to make plant foods more craveable, then we're helping people move towards that and make it more familiar, more normal, and more acceptable. So this photo is to remind me to talk about barriers. I feel like a lot of times we want theory to just easily flow into reality. But the reality of it is it's a lot more difficult than that, right? I use the example often of sleep hygiene, right? People come in, can't sleep. Say, okay, can you not fall asleep? Can you not stay asleep? We go through the whole thing. And then we hand them a list and say, okay, keep your room at this temperature, make sure it's dark, make sure it's quiet, make sure you go to bed at the same time. You guys know, you do this, right? And then the patient inevitably looks at me and goes, this doesn't make any sense. I have a bar at the end of my street on this side and a bar on the end of the street this side. The ambulance moves by every 15 minutes. I can't do any of the things you just asked me to do. And then what do? You just kind of give up. Both of you go, okay, well, here's some, setting, right? But I think what ends up happening is, I feel like you could go one of two ways that way. You could either go give up, right, and be like, okay, just not what's going to happen here. Or you could say, well, just try harder, right, and leave the office and go home and figure yourself out. Or you can start bringing people together to share in this experience, right? And I'm not going to tell you, because this, 10 people sat around the room together, they fixed the world. But what they do start to bond. They start to form solutions for each other, right? That I can't offer them as someone outside, right? That's another thing I think, it's a little apart from this talk, but for me, especially as a clinician, I will never look like my patients. No matter how much they invite me in, no matter how much I want to be a part of the community and they welcome me, I am not, one of them. And I have to grapple with that a little bit, both in understanding my limitations, but also recognizing their giftedness and their power and what they teach me and what they teach others. And maybe my job isn't to instill or plant things in them, but to create spaces for that to happen, right? In this group, actually in this conversation, almost everybody in this group was saying how when they lived in Puerto Rico, they were a lot healthier. And when they moved to the continental United States, their health started to deteriorate. And they're exploring what systemic issues led to that. And I think there's something healing about recognizing that and then having them come up with ways that they feel like would empower them, right? We have patients who have advocated for tofu in their supermarkets, which, our communities, we call them food deserts, food swamps, food apartheid, right? You can't get anything. But yet, our patients are advocating for foods and they get them, right? You create the demand, there will be some supply. Not always, but we have seen this happen. So when we have grant funding, we try to be a part of that access. So these are examples of the weekly fresh, local, hyper-local organic produce that we're able to provide each participant when they come. And we try to build our recipes out of these as well. These boxes are particularly curated so that they're not too weird, okay? And that they're actually things that most people will eat. Every once in a while, there's something a little bit more foreign. Some of you might know kohlrabi, that purple thing up in that corner. It's kind of like a radish / turnip, apple-y. And that's kind of foreign to most of us, myself included. But we made a really nice slaw out of it, and people like that. So we partner with Get Fresh Daily, which is a local community Black wellness group, to curate these boxes through Philly Foodworks, which is our distributor. When we don't have money, and also to supplement, we partner with Sharing Excess, which is a nonprofit to work on food waste reduction. So things that would have gone to landfills end up getting redistributed to people who could use it. I think it's important to make a note, though, that this is not the same quality food, and we should not represent it as such. It is produce and fruits, vegetables that people otherwise wouldn't get, but it is not necessarily, we should never kind of put this up at the same pedestal level and say this is necessarily as dignified and as, like this is not fresh, like produce straight from the farm. It does help though. Let's not negate that. So, impact. When we did our first community cohort at the beginning of 2025, we invited non-patients to participate in the same program that we offer our patients. And surprisingly, on their own, the people who participated wrote a letter to our administration asking for more. And that is a super huge encouragement to us that we are doing something that the community wants, right? And that we could try to find money and ability and time to do this more, because we're actually meeting a need. Everyone who comes, they often say they have more energy even before they start seeing any other objective marker of health improvement. Their stress and wellness, they say, improves, and they recommend other people come. And then here, for those of you guys that are interested, I just randomly pulled a few biomarkers out here. You can see some pretty significant drops in their hemoglobin A1C in a relatively short amount of time. 2-3 months, people's A1C dropping from 14 back down to 5.7. This one, 6.6 to 6. Losing weight, transaminases decreasing, blood pressure improving. Let me see here. Yeah, and we were fortunate enough in the last year to start a relationship with an academic institution, in particular with Temple University and their College of Public Health. So for the first time in years, we've started to be able to do some data. It's really difficult for us as an FQHC, not associated with an institution with an IRB or anything, to do anything with research. So having an academic partner really helps because, again, theory is great. We'd like to know that we're actually making an impact. One of our master's in nutrition students was able to look back at some cohort data, and we see some improved confidence in eating fruits and vegetables every meal. Don't take too close of a look at this data. It does need interpretation. And they felt more motivated to improve their nutrition and more knowledgeable to be able to do so. We also see here, this is systolic blood pressure, and that's body weight. And the x-axis is the number of times they came to an appointment. So this is trying to look at dose, right? What dose of appointments or exposure to lifestyle medicine does it take to improve? And nicely, there's an improvement, a statistically significant improvement in both systolic blood pressure and body weight the longer people come. Now, the scatter, I think, is also important to notice, right? It doesn't mean that a warm body in the group means directly means improved health outcomes, right? The more an improved outcome, the more you change, the more you get an improved outcome, right? So it's not just exposure. It actually has to translate. But the interesting thing over here on the body weight is if you look at the 14 session participation, everything is now below the 0 line. So that means, well, there's no scatter above. So no one's gaining weight after 14 weeks. Now, if we take a lot more people, obviously that might change. But and the vast majority of our patients feel that the produce that they receive, those boxes, the CSA boxes, were helpful, right? And it also helped them with financial costs of eating well. So making sure that what we're investing in is actually appreciated, needed, wanted, and impactful. So a word about delivering lifestyle medicine framed primary care through shared medical appointments. So a shared medical appointment is instead of 10, 15 minutes one-on-one with a patient in an exam room, we have 2 hours together. You can make it however long you want, but we do 2 hours with a clinician, well, for me, and then also with our behavioral health consultant, right? So we have 2 billable providers in a captured audience, so to speak, an invested audience, let's put it that way, which helps with the productivity, right? So if we see like 10 people in a group, we've already seen the amount, actually foregone the number of patients we would have normally seen one-on-one in our half day, right? And we can take our time, we can spend that, invested time that way. So in that way, it increases our efficiency. You don't have to repeat yourself over and over and over. You can just say it once and have everyone kind of discuss. And if repetition is needed, you repeat it from week to week. And you don't have to repeat it multiple times, only in one-on-one, right? It's face-to-face education content and multi-directional learning. I can't tell you how much more I learn about my patients in these groups than when I'm just upstairs in the clinic. Not to knock traditional primary care. I just really like this one. Group and psychological support, increased motivation for adherence occurs in these group settings. And these groups encourage self-efficacy and responsibility and shared insights about self-management and quality of life. So all of these are documented benefits in the literature about shared medical appointments. And also reimagining productivity, right? A lot of the cool things about lifestyle medicine is often they're things applicable to all human beings. So as clinicians, as we practice for ourselves, we become more credible models for our patients. We're also better at counseling in that way as well. And we're better about saying, I don't know, or like, we can figure this out together. So more effective in motivating, more credible. And because we get more time with the patients and we get to work as a team, there's all this increased joy, I think, out of these relationships. And it helps with our well-being and burnout. And again, there's the setup, the context allows us to learn a lot more about one another. So what are we trying to build? So the lifestyle medicine pillars help us look at what we need to heal from the diseases and then how to thrive as human beings. So we want to be able to curate a space for community, right, in relationship and work out that beauty of anava. And then we want to talk about being able to help with access, right? We can't tell and expect people to just go and do without helping provide the means for those things to be done. And then where we as clinicians aren't simply, we don't want it to be where clinicians are simply trying to do more and be more, right? We want to be creative in facilitating environments that are not zero sum, right? So that's why I think shared medical appointments are a great way to do that. They foster that synergy, both from patients and other team members. And then we all get to move forward in the same direction together towards the kingdom of Christ. So the question I think we want to be continually asking is, what does it mean to pursue the kingdom of God now, given the reality of our world? And perhaps reimagine those systems that give us this day our daily bread, right? Work towards systems that genuinely and actively seek God's promises, will, and the kingdom of earth as it is on earth as it is in heaven, and where we collectively can finally be freed from that anxiety that's talked about in Matthew 26, right? So we can rest and eagerly do the work God has for us. So speaking of community, it takes a lot of people to do this. We have students, anywhere from high school students, college students, pre-med students, medical students, graduate students. We have some chefs that have come curious to know what I'm doing and how I'm doing it, and they offer their kind of skills and talents and concepts. We have artists coming to help and learn from us and learn with us, and also like foreign grad physicians looking to help. So if you guys want to take a picture of this, these are some resources I wanted to offer you. So again, Full Plate Living is a free curriculum. It comes as, I think, a 1-session, 4-session, 8-session, there might be a 6-session one too, with slides and facilitator guides, everything that you would need to do this. And it can be done as a shared medical appointment. It can be billed as a shared medical appointment. You can find it there. This next one is, if you're interested in becoming lifestyle medicine certified, board certified, these are scholarships that are going to open up next week, I think. There's one called the National Training, I want to say Initiative, NTI Scholar. It's, if you're at an FQHC, CHC, you automatically qualify. It's 50% off the cost of everything. Well, hold on, actually, I'll come back to this if you guys need to take a picture, but here, there it is. So 50% off certification stuff. So that includes going to the conference. It's usually November. Foundations of Lifestyle Medicine Board Review course and the certification fee. So 50% off that if you're interested. And then this one is the HEAL Scholarship. This is for MD-DOs, NPs, PAs who come from an underrepresented background working in underrepresented work. And this is a full ride scholarship. So it's like $4,000 or something dollars in value. And that will open April 15th and it closes like May 11th. It's like this really short window. But again, this is where you want to find it at that second website. This one, the third website, is just a really nice document about applying lifestyle medicine in family medicine, if you're interested in that. The next one, there is a free curriculum on culinary medicine that includes videos and handouts, materials for doing this with patients if you're interested, or for yourself. And then the last one is with our students doing projects, they were able to put some of our recipes up on our website. These are all whole food, plant-based, no oil, no added sugar recipes that are inspired by what our patients ask for. It's not a comprehensive list of all the recipes we do, because we basically develop a new recipe every week because people change what they want and it changes what we have. But this is one of the things we make too. There is the, what do you call it, QR code for the survey. So go ahead and scan that. But I'm happy to take questions if you have any. Yeah.
That's a really cool concept. I've never heard of, like the shared office one quick question there is like, you said that's like a billable type encounter.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. Would you like me to say more about that?
Well, yeah, maybe the logistics. And then
Sure.
the other thing was just like, sounds like there's takes a lot of buy-in to go through it as a patient. Like, how did you recruit people to do that?
Let me answer the second part first. When we first, well, actually, it was, I would argue that it was harder to get buy-in from leadership than it was to get buy-in from patients. Patients, by and large, if they are free, some of them are working during the day, or some of them think 10 a.m. is too early to get up. But patients generally are excited about this. I think the idea for being able to eat, being able to hang out with other people, that battling that loneliness epidemic that we have, and also seeing clinicians care about lifestyle medicine pillars, right? Whole people health is, I think, quite novel still for our patients to see and hear, and they really get excited about that. We get about a 20% show rate, so we do over-recruit for the number of people that we are expecting. But we aim for 8 to 10 patients per group, and we meet weekly for 10 to 12 weeks. And people come and go as they're able to. Some people have come to multiple cohorts, so like we're talking 30 plus sessions that they've been to. Some people come maybe a couple times. We have a woman who came twice but hasn't been able to come back because she has a son who has autism and she can't make it out. But she took her A1C from 12 to 6.5 in 3 months from what she learned. And I got to hear that from her primary care physician. And she's super excited. One of our students went and interviewed her because we were like, wow, good job. And so from that perspective, yeah, we've never been very organized about recruitment, but we could, and it might be a good idea once we can get ourselves together. Now, when it comes to billing, there is a billing code for group visits, okay? We do not use that billing code for 2 reasons. Depending on your organization, you may not be able to bill that code. The second reason is because it pays less than an individual one-on-one visit. So what we do is we bill the E&M code for an individualized encounter. We do a 99213 or a 99214. I once sent a guy to the hospital because he stroked during the group. So I could have billed a 99215. But in order to make an individualized encounter, some people in shared medical appointments will pull each patient out individually and do a quick intervention. I have stayed away from that for the past, 6, 7 years now, because I feel like it just really breaks up the rhythm and the continuity of the group. What we do is we engage each person and we keep track of how that engagement happened. And everyone is welcome to have an individualized private conversation if they want, but that's not a requirement, right? They also get their vitals checked, not because we want to track it. And in fact, we make it a point that we won't want our patients to be marking down their weights and their blood pressures. But as a result, we have those and it becomes an individualized visit. So we can bill it that way. And that is the standard of care, or the current recommendation for how to run these shared medical plans nationally. But because our behavioral health consultant is also taking a portion of the time, 30 to 45 minutes, she can also bill as a individualized. And that was agreed upon with our CBH payers, that they wanted us to use that billing code. So I think I covered it, right? Yeah. Yes, they have standard medical care with their primary care doctor, who is at Esperanza. So all patients that participate in our patient program, not the community program, are patients at Esperanza. We've had community members drop in and ask to be part of it, but because of billing, like we have to say, we wait for our community groups. But they're managed as standard medical care with their primary care doctor. And that's the other important thing, is that we maintain those regular visits because we are de-escalating meds, because we are able to take people down off their medications. You're not on this medication for life anymore. There's actually a diabetes in remission code. Did you guys know that just came out? There's an ICD-10 code now for that. So it is possible. Any other questions? Yeah.
How many do they use in the sessions?
Sessions are 2 hours each. We go from 10 to 12 usually, and most of them are 10 weeks long. But I think the reason we did 10 weeks initially was because they were piloted groups. But now I think the goal is just to make them continuous. Like you drop in any week you want, we'll be there. Okay. All right, can you guys do me a favor? I do this for my daughter. She liked Taylor Swift at one point. Can we do a selfie? Okay. If you don't want to, you can hide. Okay. All right. Look like you had fun or something. Okay. All right. Thanks. All right. Thank you guys. If you have other questions, I'll hang out for a little bit. But or I can ask. I don't know how much. Okay. Yeah. That's.